Aliens are an interesting topic to anyone who is interested in science fiction and even to some scientists. There are lots of ideas that have been used in books or television material. Contrary to films of a considerably more commercial nature, this is somewhat different in novels, especially in the case of space operas, a genre that produced some outstanding works of great intellectual depth. But the vast majority of movies have one thing in common: aliens are usually hostile and try to invade Earth. Even in the cases they do not wage war openly, they are not actually benevolent. In almost all cases, they initially appear to be far more advanced technologically, but what do we really see? Weapons of great destructive power, ships capable of traversing outer space, near infinite energy supply and force fields are all things we either already have, could build if we so desired, or will be able to build in only a few decades' time. Still, it would be quite pointless to launch a manned spacecraft with the intention of leaving the solar system, because the crew could travel a lifetime without even reaching the nearest Earth-like planet. However, realizing such a project would in fact be possible even today. Most of the other things portrayed in movies is just fancy stuff that serves no practical purpose and could be replaced by different technology producing almost the same end result. Nonetheless, I don't want to discuss the question why invasion movies always follow the same pattern, because the answer is obvious. I do, however, like to share my opinion on what I think would be realistic to expect. In that context, it is not important whether or not extraterrestrials actually exist, and if they did, how advanced they were at this point, because it is completely irrelevant as long as we are oblivious to their existence. The states of not knowing that something does not exist or not knowing about something that does exist, but does not interact with us, are effectively the same. Therefore, the sole interesting question is what would happen in case of an encounter. The only plausible scenario in which both parties would be of approximately equal power is when they meet somewhere in outer space and are far more advanced than when they left their home planets. But then again, the chance of such an encounter would be so dim that it can safely be ignored for any practical purpose. Additionally, we have not yet become stellar, so it is not something that would happen to us in the near future anyway. Which is the same reason it is not us who will be meeting extraterrestrial life on another planet. Even though the chances of the opposite happening are equally small, it is an interesting thing to ponder. Now, for any civilization to travel through space, they basically have to give up their planet. As superluminary travel is not possible and there is no sign that it ever will be, the expedition crew will become separated from their planet, and there is no chance of them ever returning unless they find means of expanding their lifetime to thousands of years. Essentially, the people on the planet and those on the ship will develop individually. After only a few decades, they will have become completely distinct cultures. The severe limitation in terms of speed compared to the vast distances in the universe need the ship to travel for hundreds and thousands of years before they will find anything like a habitable planet, let alone one with life on it. Mind you, even at the speed of light, which is already far faster than the speed an unmanned space probe travels at, it would take more than 100,000 years to traverse only the Milky Way. Reaching the Andromeda Galaxy, the nearest spiral galaxy, would take more than 2.6 million years. Anyhow, no matter whether the people on the ship live that long or it takes many generations, they will obviously develop and advance scientifically during that time. Therefore, it is impossible that visitors from another planet are only slightly advanced than us. At first impression, this might suggest that we would be annihilated in case of an invasion. While that is certainly true, I also think one is implausible to happen in the first place. People seem to forget that advancement does not only apply to technology, but also society itself. And by any means appropriate, it seems to me that the form of arbitrary barbarism that war is, it is something that society will overcome eventually. At the point a civilization becomes so powerful they have no limits anymore, war simply becomes obsolete. It's kind of like the nuclear standoff. There will be no nuclear war because everyone knows in case one happens, everyone loses. Imagine that on a scale that would not only be unpleasant, but literally wipe away everyone involved. Past that point, war and the very notion of violence will become obsolete, and even the idea will vanish eventually. Another concept people like to bring up is the idea that aliens would want to experiment on us, probably just like we do on animals and did on humans before, to gain medical and biological knowledge. This craze, however, originates from the same misjudgment of what advancement actually implies. If we knew absolutely everything about every species on our planet, which we don't, not by far, there probably would not be much surprise if we discovered an extraterrestrial one. At least in the sense that we could understand it easily by advanced means of acquiring knowledge and without having to harm it, most likely without it even being aware of any observers. One last thing might be the possibility that they need resources, and that is why they visit our planet. Considering that they managed to travel for hundreds or thousands of years without depleting their energy source or whatever they need, it is likely that they would have discovered a way of solving their problem already. Just as in the previous example, though, I think it is safe to assume they could just take or do whatever they want without us even noticing. It can be very difficult to even begin to imagine what it means to be 1,000 years more advanced. A certain scientist likes to use an anthill as an example there. Just as we would not stop if we drove by one and would not try to explain to the ants what it means to be more advanced than them, a civilization that far superior would not even stop by to step on us. In conclusion, I consider it highly unlikely to face destruction by the hand of alien invaders, simply because neither we nor our planet are interesting enough to someone who has lived and evolved in space for generations. Either, in the much more probable case, we are simply too far off in space or time to be reached by anyone, or we would not even notice that we have been visited.